All right, today we're tackling a really fascinating puzzle. You've got these highly trained, brilliant medical professionals, right? So why would they sometimes skip what is arguably the most important step in stopping infections? It's a question that gets right into the messy, complicated world of human behavior, which is exactly where we love to be.
So, that's really the big question we're digging into today. In a place where lives are literally hanging in the balance, why is a rule that seems so incredibly simple so hard to follow? You'd think it would be automatic, right? Well, as we're about to find out, the answer is anything but simple.
So, let's set the scene. We're talking about the intensive care unit, the ICU, and the goal seems ridiculously straightforward. Just keep your hands clean, stop infections from spreading. Easy, right? But a 2020 study out of the Republic of Ireland discovered that hitting this target is one of the toughest nuts to crack in the whole field of infection control. It's a total paradox, and we are going to get to the bottom of it.
Okay, so to really crack this case, we need a way to think about it, a framework. The researchers who looked into this didn't just, watch people and take notes. Nope, they used a specific model to get a much deeper understanding of what was really going on.
And that model is called the CALM-B model. It's actually pretty simple but super powerful idea. It says that for any behavior to happen, and I mean any, you need three things to line up. You need the capability, the opportunity, and the motivation. Think of it like a three-legged stool. If just one of those legs is missing, the whole thing falls over. The behavior just doesn't happen.
So this CALM-B model is going to be our investigative toolkit. We're going to use it to break this whole hand hygiene puzzle down into those three key questions. So let's start with the first one. Capability.
All right, first up, capability. This one seems like a no-brainer, right? Do these doctors and nurses actually know how to wash their hands properly? Do they have the skills? Of course they do. But the study found something way more interesting, something much more subtle going on here.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Check out this difference in mindset. When researchers asked them about their skills, the doctors tended to be very confident. I've got this, I know what I'm doing. But the nurses, they had a totally different take. They talked about wanting constant reminders, always needing to be refreshed on the topic.
Yeah, listen to this quote from one of the doctors. You can almost hear it, right? I'm confident, I don't feel I need a lot more to be taught to me. It's this idea that, capability is something you achieve, you check a box, and then you're done. Now, let's contrast that with what the nurses were saying.
But then you get this perspective from a nurse. You can never have enough. It's always good to be reminded. See the difference? For them, it's not a one-and-done thing. It's a continuous practice. This split in how they even think about their own skills, well, that's our first big clue in this whole mystery.
Okay, so we've looked at capability. Now let's move on to the second piece of our puzzle, opportunity. And this is a big one because it's not just about what's going on inside someone's head. It's about the world around them, the physical stuff, the social dynamics, everything that's influencing them moment to moment.
And wow, look at these numbers. It's a massive difference. You've got almost 60% of nurses saying, yeah, my coworkers encourage me to wash my hands. But for doctors, that number just drops off a cliff, down to about 14%. So you've got these two groups working in the exact same space, but it's like they're living in two completely different social worlds.
In this quote from a nurse, well, it kind of gets to the heart of why that gap exists. She says that if she, as a nurse, tells a doctor what to do, they don't like being told. So suddenly that opportunity to remind someone isn't just a friendly little nudge. It's this complicated dance around social hierarchy. It's tough.
On top of the social stuff, nurses also brought up all these practical, real-world barriers. Things like, hey, there aren't enough sinks, or we're constantly short-staffed, or we're always getting interrupted. These are all things that literally get in the way of the opportunity to wash your hands. And what's really telling is, the doctors in this study didn't mention these things.
Okay, we've looked at can they do it, capability. We've looked at do they have the chance, opportunity. Now for the final and maybe the trickiest piece of all, motivation. What's actually driving them deep down to either do it or not?
Well, the good news is the number one motivator is a really positive one. It's all tied up in their professional identity. At the end of the day, they want to wash their hands because they see themselves as good doctors, as good nurses. They're there to protect their patients. It's not about rules or getting in trouble. It's about who they are. But, and this is a big but, here's where things get complicated. See, there's this official target they're supposed to hit, 90% compliance. On paper, that number is supposed to be a motivator, right? To push everyone to do better. The question is, does it actually work that way?
For some, it does the exact opposite. It actually becomes a demotivator. This doctor flat out called it absolutely impossible. He felt that if you tried to follow the rules to the letter, you'd literally get no other work done. So instead of inspiring people, this target just feels, well, out of touch, unachievable.
And you have to remember, motivation is this constant internal battle. On one shoulder, you have this really powerful driver. I don't want to get sick myself. Self-preservation is a huge motivator. But on the other shoulder, you have the immediate, painful reality of washing your hands dozens, maybe hundreds of times a day. Your skin gets raw, it cracks. It's a constant tug-of-war between that long-term fear and that immediate physical pain.
Okay, so we've looked at the clues. We've examined capability, opportunity, and motivation. Let's step back, put it all together, and finally solve this puzzle. Why is this one simple rule so ridiculously hard to follow?
And here's the solution. The reason it's so hard is because hand hygiene isn't just one simple thing. It's not one behavior. It's a completely different challenge for a doctor who thinks they've already got it perfected versus a nurse who's part of a culture of constant reminders. It's a different challenge when you're right next to a sink versus when you're swamped, understaffed, and the sink is all the way down the hall.
And that brings us to the single most important lesson from this entire study. If you try to fix this with a blunt instrument, with a one-size-fits-all rule like that 90% target, you're just going to fail. Because the researchers warn that when you have a one-size-fits-all approach, there's a huge risk that it ends up fitting absolutely nobody.
And that leaves us with one last big question to think about, and it goes way beyond the walls of a hospital. If a simple, one-size-fits-all rule can fail so badly in a place as critical as the ICU, where else are we doing that? In our jobs, in our schools, maybe even in how we run our countries. Where else are we trying to apply these simple, cookie-cutter solutions to incredibly complex human problems? It's definitely something to chew on.